Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, where we are talking about after the hashtag and what real allyship looks like. And I'm joined by Nikki Rodgers, and she and I were talking before we went live. We actually had decided that we were going to talk about this topic several weeks ago. And when this morning we were just saying this is more timely than ever. And so, Nikki, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and then let's dig into this very, very timely topic around allyship.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. Again, Nikki Rodgers. I am a human resources professional. I just recently was employed by GE, but I have left the company and certainly now looking forward to new opportunities. But taking some time to spend with my daughter, which is pretty crucial this summer, and I feel fortunate and privileged to be even able to do that. So, but again, just looking for new opportunities. But made the connection with Mo a few months ago, I guess, towards the end of the last year, and have just loved the connection and the conversation that we've had. And like Mo said, we had a conversation a few weeks ago, and Ahmaud Arbery was top of mind for me.
Yep.
I had just done my hashtag run with Ahmaud, and for some reason it was just bothering me that I noticed that there were several people that were commenting, in my Facebook or Instagram page about Ahmaud, and I appreciated it, but at the same time, I felt like it was just a way to publicize a hashtag. And I knew it was deeper than that. And that one affected me because I like to run. I like to, go out my neighborhood, which, honestly is not all Black, not
Right.
very diverse. And it's a thought that occurs to me when I go out or when my husband goes out for a walk. And so, I just wanted to dive into this a little bit deeper and somehow connect it to, what it really means to be an ally. So Thank you, Mo, for the opportunity to have this conversation.
Yeah, and I think, more timely. So you and I talked about it. We were talking about Maud, and then Breonna Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
and then George Floyd. And now we are in a moment in time where allyship, white allyship, is more crucial than ever. And I have to say, I am tired of seeing white people with their photo ops and their hashtags and no action.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about today is about what real allyship looks like. And I know that you and I are really aligned on one thing, and I will say this: you better get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you're going to screw up and you're going to do the wrong thing. And guess what? It's not about you. And as a white ally, when you make that mistake, you say, thank you for letting me know. I am smarter, and you move on. And it's not about you, and it's not about what your intent was, like, not about you. So I would say the whole centering thing about what Nikki and I are about to talk about is it is not about you. Stop centering on your whiteness and your privilege, and get ready to be uncomfortable. So, and never more than this moment in time is inaction an option, because otherwise you're complicit.
Right.
So, throwing it down. All right, Nick.
Right.
What does being a true ally look like?
Yeah. I think it's, I think it's a process, first of all. I think first, you really have to be aware of your own implicit biases, those things that are, maybe you saw several things on the TV that are just in the back of your head. Growing up, you heard your family members or friends say certain things. Maybe it bothered you, maybe it didn't, because maybe that's just something that you were used to hearing all the time. But if you're listening to this now and you're bothered by, a lot of the unrest that's happening right now, I believe that there's something there. right? That you want to start and look into, what are my biases? What have I said in the past? What have I heard and let slide? Things like that. I think it's starting with that. And then listening, right? It's just, hearing what, especially right now, the African American community has to say.
Mhm.
What does Black Lives Matter really mean? Stop before you say all lives matter. Yes, that's very true. But right now, this is the moment where, and it's been like that for a while, frankly. This is not new. George Floyd is not a new thing. This has been happening for hundreds of years. This goes way back. And
Right.
that's why people are so tired. But again, just, listen, understand what people are saying. What are really the tenets of Black Lives Matter? Think about, some of those things and educate yourself. Um, you know, and I know you and I talked about this, Mo, too, but there's so many resources out there that you can literally just put in a Google, what can I do? And think about that. And we'll share some of those with you today too. But, I think it's really important to note that this is stuff that you can do and you don't have to wait on someone to tell you exactly what
And
to do.
and that it's not on your Black colleagues and friends to educate you, right? I think, and that's where privilege really, even just understanding, like if I would come to you and say, Nikki, help me to understand what Black Lives Matter is all about. That's not your job. You're already under enormous pressure, enormous stress. My job is to go out and educate myself. Because there are so, like, literally, like you said, I can Google systemic racism and start to find things out. You may have heard terms that you haven't heard before. Anti-racism, what's that? There are so many good resources. And I will say there is a lot of unlearning to be done.
Yeah.
So not just education and learning, but unlearning, what we consider violence, right? Like hearing, oh my gosh, there's the looting and the store and the property, and how could they be doing this? Versus, so that violence is unacceptable versus violence against actual human beings has been okay, right? There's an unlearning that has to happen there.
Right.
I'd love, Nikki, what some of your favorite resources are, and I'll post. I know you'll post this out on your page. I'll post it on mine as well. And I posted something on Monday because I was getting so many questions of what can I do. I finally just, here's what you can do, and there's some educational resources. What are some of your favorite books, blogs, podcasts? Let's chat about some of the resources that people kind of need to be educated.
Yeah. So I go back to, I had an African American studies class in college. One of the first books that I read that really opened my eyes to things was Howard Zinn's a People's History of the United States, and that talked about some of the systemic racism and how the country was formed and all of this. And it was just shocking to me because I don't recall learning that in my early school days. So that was definitely kind of a basic history lesson, about Christopher Columbus and things like that. So kind of starting with something like that. There are definitely some different blogs out there, like that are specific to African American resources, like The Root or Griot or Madame Noir, that really talk about some African American issues. I'll warn you, some of the language there might be very blunt. But again, there are some resources there that, I constantly look at that are just kind of easy feeds for me,
Yep.
That I check out. But there are so many different books in there. How to be an anti-racist. There's
and by the way, I want to so Layla Assad is the author of that. She initially released that as a free workbook. If you happen to see that right now, it is no longer free. She's got a book out, buy that book. And if you see a circulation of that free copy, she was actually just out yesterday talking about how they're seeing that. Pay her for her work.
Yeah.
Right? So if you see that free workbook, How to Be an Anti-Racist, make sure and connect that back to her and pay her for the book. And that is a workbook. Right? That's what I love about that resource in particular.
Mm-hmm. Lots of other books. So I just finished reading Just Mercy. Again, very eye-opening. You just wonder, as a Southerner, I'm even like, how did I even live in the South? And I laugh just to keep from crying, because there were definitely moments in that book. And again, very explicit examples, real life examples. This stuff actually happened, of some of the systemic racism that we deal with, and have been dealing with for years. I'm trying to think of a couple of other books, but those are ones that come to mind. Just watching Netflix. So DuVernay has 13th, right?
Yes.
Again, eye-opening.
Yep.
In terms of
when they see us.
Yes.
I've also Austin Channing. I'm Still Here.
I'm Still Here. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got really good work. I really appreciate the work that Brittany Pecknett does, and DeRay McKesson. So I Am DeRay, and I list all of these. And Pod Save the People and they actually have really been looking at reform and what. They've got sort of, here are 10 things research based on how we can really change the justice system and policing. So, yeah, I mean, we started it with, there's so much, there's literally no excuse, because we have an abundance of riches in terms of opportunities. And I would say just start.
Yeah.
Right. Like Nikki, you and I just listed a whole bunch of resources. Start with one. Right. And but you have to do the work.
Right.
So I think that piece, and again, like you were saying, you want to watch Netflix, right?
Pick your medium.
Right. You want to throw in your, earbuds and take a walk and listen to a podcast. We shared several. If you're a reader and a workbook and write it down, we got you covered. So educate yourself. First step.
Absolutely.
And I would say in that, like I say, do the work, but don't let that be daunting where you're like, it just feels like too much. Start.
Yeah.
What are some other things that folks can do? You and I were talking about a lot about, seeing companies come out with, statements.
Yeah.
Okay, then what?
Right. Exactly. Just to kind of clue you in on the conversation that we had, we were talking about, as some of these events transpired, obviously there are leaders of companies that are thinking about this. And I was having a discussion with my husband and a friend of mine, just saying, wouldn't it be great if, the CEO of the company came out and said, this is just wrong, condemning the actions that happened to George Floyd, demanding that the 4 police officers actually be charged. I believe there's only one that's been charged so far. Right. So again, just going through the due process, figure out what actually happened. But again, bringing the people that committed this crime to justice. Right.
And the ongoing crimes that we're seeing.
That's right.
In the protests. Yeah.
That's right. But just really thinking about, how all of this stuff affects your employees. So I think as a leader, whether you're a CEO or just a manager of a team of 2 people or 1 or whatever, it's being able to speak out and really not just let this stuff slide. So wherever you are, just acknowledging it, I think, first of all, goes a long way. But you've got to be real about it, right? Like, I don't want to see everybody coming out with, when I know that that's not how everybody thinks, and you can tell, right? But I think many of us remembered a few weeks ago, we would see every business that you've done business with sending a letter out about COVID. I don't necessarily want to see that happen unless those companies really mean it. And then even past that, yes, maybe the company puts out a public statement, but you know that there are people that think differently. And some of this behavior or racist statements continue to happen. So, going back to your question about what does allyship look like, it's calling that out.
Yeah.
When we see something happening, whether it's, addressing police brutality or somebody making a comment about it, or even just, you see a person mansplaining, a woman, makes a suggestion, and then a man comes in and, takes her idea and takes credit for it, right? Being able to call that out is what I think being an ally really is.
Yeah.
So examples like that.
Yeah. Right. If I see somebody, saying that you're just being an angry Black woman right now,
Right.
right? Like, nope,
That's not okay.
not okay. And I think one of the things, so I've been in a lot of conversations this week where a CEO has come out with a statement, and then people are, so the statement has come out, and then there's nothing in the actual day-to-day around support. Right. So before you and I even started this, I asked the question, like, are you okay? Right?
Yeah.
How are you? Are you in a space where we can actually do this? Because there are a lot of people that are not okay right now.
Right.
And that might be hour by hour. And so I've, talked with, and I won't name companies, right, where the CEO came out and has taken meaningful action.
Yeah.
Right? An all hands meeting, public statements, like, this is where we stand, this is how we behave. And yet that person they direct report to said, that's all happening out there. We're business as usual. We got to do this, all day leadership meeting. Absolutely tone deaf. Right. And that's not being an ally, because there are going to be people on your team that are not okay. And if you aren't doing something as simple as saying, how are you? And listening and adjusting based on what you hear, that it's like, you know what? Go and take half a day, right? Take care of your mental, physical, emotional health, right? And let me know how I can support you. Or, okay, you're good. Let me know if that changes. I'm going to keep checking in until you tell me not to, right? Like, I think that is also allyship. And the listening piece is really big there.
Right. Right.
Okay, so what are some other actions that kind of in workspace, right? So I think get comfortably being uncomfortable, and it's like, speak up even if your voice is shaking and your knees are shaking, because imagine what it would feel like to be the person who is experiencing those microaggressions, or overt, right? Like the difference between our unconscious bias and, racism, right? What are some other things in this moment in time, Nikki, that you would have people do as allies?
Yeah, you mentioned the word microaggressions. I think so again, going back to educating yourself, look it up. Figure out how to recognize some of those microaggressions, because you may not even realize that some of that is happening, or that you may even be doing it yourself, right?
Yep.
So again, educating yourself so that you know better, so that you can do better, and then you can help others do better. Even if you don't agree with someone, it's just a matter of stopping the behavior, right?
Yep.
So I think that's number one. I think the other thing that you could do is, as many companies certainly have employee resource groups or affinity networks, things like that. Connecting. There's nothing that says, at least in my experience, there's nothing that says that a person that's not of a certain race or identity can't join or support that particular group. So if there's something that group is doing, ask to join, participate. I think that shows your allyship as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And, we talk a lot about, I call it AAA just because it's easy for me to remember, like that allyship is amplification
Mhm.
and advocacy as well. So, right, the whole idea is that if you share something, I amplify that, right? I amplify your good work. I amplify
Yes.
your ideas. I amplify your contributions. And then I also advocate. So if you're not in the room, and I hear something, whether positive or negative, right? I hear of an opportunity. I advocate for you getting that opportunity.
Right.
I advocate for you being ready. And I advocate for you if I hear something like, Nikki's just a little abrasive, right?
Mhm.
Right? Like that microaggression right there, I stop it in its tracks. Like,
Mhm.
if we were saying that about Bob, the same behavior, would you be calling Bob abrasive, or would you say Bob's a leader?
That's right. That's right.
So, and all of those again, I think we talk a lot in this series about curiosity. So when we're talking about allyship and being a good ally, staying curious about how you can do better. And I think even sharing, right, with the people that you work with. And again, all of this is ripple effect, family, friends, community, that there are going to be mistakes made. And I need you to point them out to me so I can be better.
Right.
I always say I can't fix something if I don't know it's broken. And so as an ally, right, sharing that vulnerability of I'm not going to get it right, and I need you to point that out to me so I can be a better ally.
Right. Right.
This moment in time, I know we talked about education. As I've had people reaching out to me saying, what can I do? I'd say check in, right?
Mhm.
Simple, how are you? And listen, and hold space for people. Education, if you want, donate, right? There are different organizations that you can donate to right now, whether that is posting bail for people, or whether that is the long-term systemic change work. If writing a check is the thing that works, great. That can help lead to systemic change. If you are going to go march, as a white person showing at a march, you better understand your role, right? And that is to follow the lead of Black protesters and support them. It's not just centered around you and your experience, and quite literally to put your body between police and Black protesters if things start to get heated. And to also shut down white protesters who might be agitating things. And I'm going to give an example of that. Yesterday, I was at a Black Lives Matter march, and a uniformed police officer, white, middle-aged, got up and said, I'm here because I want you to know that we see you and we hear you, and we know there needs to be change. And a young white woman who was next to me started screaming, "We don't believe you. We don't believe you." And I just looked at her and said, "Not helpful. Be quiet." Right? That's not her place. She doesn't get to decide, right? And so that behavior needs to be, so if you're gonna march, know your role.
If I could just add to that, Mo,
Mhm.
and this is coming from me personally, please don't destroy property, spray paint Black Lives Matter. I've seen so many examples, and I know there's a narrative out there about, especially the Black community, but you're starting to see this emerge where constantly you're seeing, I don't know if they're actually allies or someone just instigating. I don't know what it is, but I'll just put it point blank. Rioting isn't helping. Destroying property isn't helping. That's not a way to be an ally. So, I mean,
Well,
take
and
what you will out of that, but I just want to make sure I add that piece.
100%, because
Yeah.
a white person is not going to be the person that pays the price for that. So, right. And that's like, you shut it down if you see somebody else white doing that. And then vote,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And understand the down ballot, right? That this isn't just about national election. What's happening with your attorney general's races, your sheriff, like all of those matter. And so I think there's both protest and there's also political, right? So that a policy change can happen.
Right.
And just know that being an ally it's not a light switch, right? It's ongoing work that needs to be done.
Right.
I go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, advocate for things like body cams. You mentioned, donating to organizations that are helping the cause, but, signing petitions, really demanding that people be brought to justice when things like this happen, like what's happening with George Floyd.
Color of change is actually.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of, I think there's a few different petitions that are going out right now, but again, find the one that makes sense to you, what resonates with you, and, put your name behind that, because that speaks volumes as well, right? This stuff, the public putting pressure on our elected officials and our governments to really see this justice through is important. And, as a member of the African American community, that's where I need your allyship is
Yep.
Voting. It's signing his petitions, demanding that people be brought to justice.
Yep. So education, holding space, checking in, understanding that priorities might need to shift, deadlines might need to change, expectations. How is that person mentally, physically, emotionally? March, donate, vote, and understand that there is not work in life, right? This is it's all there. There's just life. And so how we can show up, and particularly in this moment in time, spend your privilege is really important. I appreciate you, where it's like, don't ask people to educate, and you just came on and helped educate people on allyship. And I really, really deeply appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity, Mo. It's a very important conversation, just point blank. And I feel that a lot more people are paying attention to it. So, I just say, go with it. Do what you feel is right. Continue to I use this in from Frozen 2. There was a song that says, do the next right thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's just about that. Really do the next right thing. You got to start somewhere.
I'm going to leave us with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mo.